Hey there, Bear Club! At the Mama Bear Initiative, we explore how to protect ourselves so we can protect our cubs, the people who depend on us. Join us and get the confidence you need to stay safe, make good choices, and protect yourself and those you care about. Let's go!
How's everybody doing?
Breathing,
tired, but good.
breathing in and out successively.
I just came from the chiropractor and I was very surprised a couple of times, especially when he cracked my neck the first time.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a little scary if you've never been to the chiropractor for somebody to just wiggle your head around and then and you're like, ah!
Yes.
But
Yeah.
even if you have experience with the chiropractor, it's still kind of...
Yeah, I don't think you ever get used to that. Anytime I've had a chiropractor do that, and every chiropractor I've gone to has done that, he's always like, relax your head, relax. And all I'm thinking about are these movies where, these violent movies, these action movies where the guy's like, and takes care of the enemy,
Yeah.
And I'm just going, don't kill me, dog.
Yeah, well, anyway. Welcome to the Mama Bear Initiative podcast. I'm Stephanie Dunham.
I'm Evelyn Mason.
I'm Rochelle Knapp.
Yeah, we're here on a Monday night.
Here we are.
I've had
Ready
the
or not.
craziest day.
A what-y day?
Craziest day.
Oh, craziest.
Starting at 6:30 when I went and got my blood drawn. The phlebotomist was happy that I filled up the urine cup. She's like, look, you have 4 tests. I hope it's full. I said, it's full. She's like, yay. Medical people get happy about the weirdest things.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's part of her job, makes her job easier, so good job.
When I had both abdominal surgeries, the nurses were very happy when I farted.
Yeah.
That's funny stuff, because I was thinking about that, and I was like, I probably shouldn't mention that. There it is.
I just went there. That's why my name is Weirdo.
Yeah, I had 2 back-to-back. I had a gallbladder out and then a gallstone within 4 days of each other. So they were thrilled when I farted.
Yeah.
I feel sort of sad. I've never had a doctor.
Evelyn,
when I farted.
You don't want to be part of this club.
No, it's not fun. It's very painful. Excruciatingly painful, actually.
You don't want to be in the club where you get abdominal surgery and the nurses are clapping for you when you fart.
Because they fill your abdominal cavity up with gas. That's why you have to fart. That way they know it's coming out.
Mine's already full of gas. So.
I think it's that, and also that it lets them know that your digestive system is working after they rearrange some parts.
Right. True.
So
anyway, moving on from that.
Do we have to move on?
I don't have
do you
to.
have more you'd like to share, Steph?
Nah.
Are you sure?
Anyways, I went to the chiropractor for the first time in a couple of years, and whoo, my neck cracked so loud I think they heard it in Arkansas.
It's weird. I was at work and I was like, what is that sound? Did a tree just fall down?
Well,
no, that was my neck.
Before that falls, it goes,
Yeah, it was a mess. Everything's a mess.
Everything's a mess.
He said my shoulders are like this. My head's too far forward. My hips are out of alignment. My weight's too much on one side. My hips are going this way. My shoulders are going that way.
How are you standing up straight?
I'm not. That's the problem.
Okay. It's funny. I'm so used to seeing you the way you are. I would have no idea any of that's going on. So will you be recognizable to us now? Will we perceive you as being crooked when you were crooked before and now you're straight?
I don't know. I don't know.
The things we talk about on this podcast are always never boring. That's for sure.
Anyway, so I did talk to the chiropractor a little bit about previous experiences with other chiropractors, and this guy was super arrogant, and he was adjusting my clavicles, my everything, the bottoms of my feet, ankles, toes. I mean, he was yanking and pushing on everything. And then the other one, the one that you and I like, Ellen, he just stuck to neck, back, hips, basically. And I was telling him that, I like it when, I said, the other guy was like getting in, like in my space about what he thought I should be doing nutritionally and wasn't willing to listen to anything I said.
Mm-hmm.
The first one was telling me we need to get your nutrition aligned, and I'm like, well, I take this particular multivitamin because it doesn't upset my stomach, and I've tried all kinds. He's like, oh, well, that company, this, that, and the other thing, and I'm like, I'm out of here.
Yeah.
I never went back. I have boundaries.
I don't blame you. I mean, there's a certain amount that we can put up with, but I think there's that tipping point where you just know, like, you know what? This guy is too, fill in the blank. I'm done.
Overstepping.
Yeah, I mean, I've had doctors like that, in other situations where it's sort of like you're like, well, this is the way it is, or whatever. But after a while, it's like you just sort of sense something's off, like this is too much, or it doesn't fit with what I'm asking for, or what I should be getting from this person.
Yeah.
So then it's like, okay, now what am I going to do about this? Once you realize.
I think that was probably 5 or 6 years ago. And I think I was just starting to learn about boundaries at that point in my trauma recovery. And I was just starting to figure out that I had a choice. What? Just because I'm seeing this doctor, this chiropractor, doesn't mean I have to stay with him if he's crossing boundaries with me. The first thing he said to me was he wanted me to get x-rays, and I'm like, and he wasn't going to touch me at all. He wasn't going to do anything until he got these x-rays because he doesn't make mistakes.
Oh gosh.
That's how he put it. That was my first, like, what?
Okay, see this? This is a red flag. That's your first red flag when someone says, I don't make mistakes.
The second thing he said to me that kind of was a red, I guess you could call it red. I have my phone here, a red flag.
Okay, this is my lipstick. Michelle, do you have something red you can wave around?
Not handy.
Okay, now, okay, I have PTSD. Okay,
right, yeah.
If I have depression, it's not normal sadness. Okay. Right. It's based in trauma.
Right.
So going for a walk isn't going to do jack whatever. And he goes, they say that going for a walk treats depression better than any medication could. And I'm like, have you listened to anything I said about trauma? This is why I struggle with depression. I don't feel like I have depression anymore. But at the time I did. I was really unmotivated. And that was the second one. The third one was when he started trying to dictate to me what I could and couldn't take nutritionally, supplement wise. And I was like,
yeah,
bye.
I mean, this is a chiropractor. So like how far reaching is chiropractic to begin with?
Well, some chiropractors think that, and I love chiropractic care. Okay. So I'm not knocking chiropractic care.
Me too. Yeah.
Okay. I think that what they do is awesome if they can help you. So I'm not knocking that, but I have met some chiropractors in my time who think that chiropractic care is the be all and end all of healthcare, period.
Right.
Okay.
And I don't believe that's true. I've not found it to be true. So, there are things that chiropractic care could do for you. Sure, there's some stuff that nutritionally you can do to help your body, supplements that you can use medicinally. Sure, I'm not disagreeing with that, but it's not a cure-all.
Right.
I was telling my son the other day that because he was asking me, I bought him this tea that I think was by, I can't remember the company, the one that does Sleepy Time.
Oh yeah.
Celestial Teas.
What is it?
Celestial teas.
Yeah, they have one that has melatonin in it. Steve was asking me about it, and like I said, well, there is some legitimacy to plant-based medications like foxglove.
Mm-hmm.
They created a heart medication from foxglove. Now it's synthesized, so it's not coming from the plant anymore. But the specific medication for certain heart conditions came from the foxglove plant.
Mm-hmm.
Same thing with cocaine is from a plant. And
Right.
any of the opioids that they use in medicine for pain, they're all synthesized now, but it came
Right.
from a plant. But if I have lavender in my house, I'm not going to suddenly be cured of my depression.
Right.
Yeah.
I might feel a little calmer maybe in the moment, but I'm not going to be like, oh, guess what? I'm no longer depressed. That's not going to happen.
Yeah. I mean, I just bought a container of lavender laundry detergent.
Yeah.
And I don't really think I'm going to fall asleep at work or anything in my clothes that have been laundered with it.
Your mental health issues aren't going to
Doesn't
suddenly be
smell.
better because you bought laundry, whatever.
Yay! It's got lavender scent.
And-
All's well.
And this is about staying in your lane, and
Mhm.
we have to be willing to speak up for ourselves when we're
Yes.
faced with somebody being pushy
Mm-hmm.
and it's
Yeah.
crossing a value boundary that we
Mhm.
have. At that point, it was like 3 strikes, you're out. I'm done.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
I gave him a chance
Yeah.
to not be a jerk, but he was
Yeah.
too arrogant for my taste. Maybe he was fine for other people, but not for me.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. Years ago, I was working a job and I was a telemarketer, which I hated and still have PTSD from.
Oof.
And this very arrogant supervisor essentially asked me to lie to sell the product we had. And I was not comprehending at first what he was saying to me, but then he handed me a script that was a lie.
Wow.
And I quit that night. That
Mhm.
crossed some major boundaries for me. I could not get on the phone and just lie to people because, first of all, I'm the voice of the company. It's gonna come back on me,
Yeah.
not on the
Right.
company. And I basically told him, "I'm out. Bye. I know
Right.
I need this job, but I don't need it that bad because I don't want to lie to people about something and have it come back on me and create all sorts of drama. I don't need."
Yeah.
And he's
Plus,
like, "Well,
yeah,
you're not making sales." I said, "That's fine. I'm out anyway."
that's like
I-
it doesn't matter.
I don't know if your
Yeah.
microphone's too far away, but you sound like you're in a tin can, Rochelle.
It might be too far. I did have it. Let me hold on. Let me make an adjustment here. That better?
That is better.
Okay.
Now
Oh,
we
good.
can now
Yeah.
now you're now
Now
we
to
can
the
hear. But you're making all kinds of noise. Sorry, audience.
Sorry, it's good now. It
Sorry,
should
guys.
move. Okay.
Well, technical issues. We are doing this live. Welcome to the party.
Well, we're not live, but we're recording
That's
Yeah.
live.
We're recording live. We are alive.
Yeah.
I think it's so important to realize in the moment when you are having this issue, like you can sense it. I know for me, I hadn't even really heard about boundaries before.
Yeah.
And somebody would say that, and I would think, well, I don't really need those because, people treat me well, and I didn't have any with my family growing up, or the family I created,
Mhm.
and boy, did that cause trouble because I was a major doormat, just trying to please everyone.
Mhm.
Mm.
And I would my thing was, if let's say one of my kids wanted to go somewhere, I would say yes, and then I would figure out a way to make it happen
Right.
instead of thinking, well, can I really do this?
Right.
Do I have something else scheduled, or is something that I have scheduled more important? Because for me it was always, well, I thought it was good to. And this is, I feel I kind of cringing just saying this, that I would lay down my life, for
Mhm.
others. I thought it was a virtue, but instead they're taking advantage of me. That's not good. I'm allowing myself to be taken advantage of.
Mhm.
That's not good. There's toxicity all around.
Right.
And then, hearing the term boundaries, it just felt so foreign at first.
Yeah, I mean, being a former people pleaser myself,
Mm.
being a doormat and, as you were saying, laying my life down
Mm-hmm.
for other people, there is an element of self-sacrifice in doing for others, but it shouldn't violate your boundaries or values if you are. Because if you're violating your own boundaries and your own values by doing something for somebody else, you're just being a people pleaser, and you're just allowing people to do whatever they want to you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I've been preoccupied with not being rejected and wanting to be accepted. So I would do and say things to, let people. True story. In high school, I had long nails. They're not so long now, but they're a little longer than they are now. And I was probably going to be told to cut them anyway. But this girl next to me goes, "Can I rip your fingernails off? Like tear them to make them shorter?" And I said, "Okay."
Oh.
And she just went one by one and just
like peeled them off.
Yeah.
Ow.
Like at the top, just like at the top, not like the entire
the whole thing off. No, but just shortening them by doing this instead of clipping them like you normally would.
Mm-hmm.
And I did it because I didn't want to be rejected.
Wow.
But if I had been like aware at that age of boundaries and like what's appropriate, what's not appropriate, it would have been, I would have been okay with saying, no, are you kidding me? But I would just let people do whatever they wanted to me because I was trained to, first of all. But I didn't know what boundaries were until like 5 years ago, and I'm 54.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I myself still struggle with boundaries. And one of the things I finally learned was not to let people just talk to me however they want. I can't so much with my job. I can't so much like tell customers, but I can set a certain kind of tone that indicates, you can't talk to me that way.
Right.
And it's difficult with fellow employees because there's a lot happening usually at the time. But I have made jokes and said things like, don't be grumpy with me or something like that to sort of give a boundary without making it a big deal. It seems to work pretty well. But I used to just let people talk to me however they wanted to, or treat me pretty much however they wanted to. Same kind of thing you were saying, Steph.
Right.
Because that's what I was taught to do. Yeah. But now I'm finally slowly learning, just let people do whatever they want. And you don't have to take everything that people are doing to you, because that's not a good way to be. And you're just hurting yourself in the end, really, because they don't care. They're just doing what they want to do.
Yeah.
I find it's hard to set a boundary. Like, I don't want to be contrary.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Relatable.
I don't want to stand up for myself. I don't want to cause trouble. I don't want to get in trouble. I don't want people to be mad at me. But at the end of the day, I feel like if I don't stand up for myself, if I don't do what I think is right, then can I be happy with myself?
Yeah.
Right.
No.
No. The answer is no.
And as a martial arts self-defense instructor, I have to not be what's the word I'm looking for? Hypocritical.
Right. That's all about the boundaries.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, I've really enjoyed learning what a boundary even is, and then giving it a go, So being in a toxic relationship for years, I felt like I was conditioned by my upbringing, for sure, by a sort of an often angry and critical dad and a passive aggressive mom. I learned, okay, to keep dad happy, do this, agree with him, don't argue with him. And I took that sort of thinking into my marriage. And unfortunately, I was married to a person who basically took full advantage of that. And I thought being a good wife, air quotes again, meant acquiescing to what he wanted and not really having my own will, not really having my own, I can't even think of the right word, but, my own life. My life was sort of absorbed into his, which worked out pretty well for him. not so well for me, but it felt normal.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
But near the end, though, as I started to become more aware of, and I think a lot of it is due to both of you, for which I'm very grateful, realized, no, this isn't okay. Oh, normal looks like speaking up for yourself, having your own life. What does
Yes.
that even mean? So that when he would start coming at me, and I would say, no. And I
Yeah.
can still remember the night that I told him, I will not always agree with you, and I will say no to you sometimes.
We have another podcast episode about saying no.
Yes, we do.
Stand your
Yes.
ground, the power of no.
Yes,
Go listen
it's a
to
good
it.
one. Oh, it's a good one. If you want
It
to
is audio,
pause,
but yes, it's good.
if you want to pause this, go back and listen to that, or however you want to do it. But yeah, it's a good one. And I will tell you, when I told him that, now it basically, I mean, my marriage was already in the toilet, but I mean, he could not accept that. He
Right.
could not accept that. And
Yeah.
then I realized, what have I been living under all these years? And what have I put up with that I
Mhm.
can't even say no to my own husband, that I can't even disagree with my own husband? It seems so basic to me, like
Mhm.
that realization of I can be my own person. And
Yeah. Yeah, because
yeah,
you have your own will.
yeah. And
You were born and therefore have your own will.
isn't that something that can be so like earth shattering? But it
I
was,
know.
and it still is, because that's not how I lived. I was always a part of other people
Yeah.
because I, let myself be, and that was my training.
Yeah.
Right.
My marriage was similar, but different in the sense that I did fight against my ex-husband's way of being, but he didn't care. Any boundary I tried to set, he just ran right over it. He didn't care.
Mm-hmm.
He was a narcissist, and we fought constantly because I wasn't going to put up with him being the way he was, and he didn't care about the way he was or how he treated me.
Mm-hmm.
So there was a constant battle going on, and it was unhealthy, to say the least. It's very toxic still. Boundary setting wasn't kept the way it was supposed to be.
It's tough to do.
It is. Especially with someone who doesn't care. It's really tough to do.
And who is like, oh, boundary, whatever.
Boundary, schmoundry.
Yes. I do what I want.
Oh, there's a line there. Let me cross it.
Yeah.
Let me step over it.
Mm-hmm.
Let me any number of things.
Stomp on it. Do what I want.
Stomp on it. Tell no.
Yeah.
Say you're being evil.
Yeah.
How childish, I think of a person like that as like stuck being 3 or 2,
Mm-hmm.
just like a little toddler. It's like, are you kidding me?
Yeah, because after we split up, he was living with someone that we knew from our previous job, and she came to me at Walmart one day and gave me this laundry list of things he was doing. And I'm like, oh, so that's what he's like, out of control. Okay. Like spending thousands of dollars on useless crap useless junk, and just basically like making everybody's lives miserable.
He was okay. He might not have been spending thousands of dollars, but he would come home with useless crap all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And some of it was to support his made up stories about whatever
delusions of grandeur.
When he was I remember when he was claiming he wanted to be a fireman, and he had the suit, the hat.
Mm-hmm.
What do you call the thing that the boots and the overalls? What is that called?
I'm not sure what that's called. I don't remember.
Anyway, he had all the gear,
the whole get up,
sitting by the door, but he was being denied entry into whatever fire hall he claimed he was trying to be a part of.
Well, here's the thing. I was a firefighter EMT in my early 20s, very early 20s. And so I knew something about that sort of thing. And I called the Delaware State Fire Board, and I said, if someone has a felony, a nonviolent felony, would you allow them in? And they said, well, we'd have to have them come before the board, but yeah, odds are they probably get in. So he didn't really want to do it.
Well, here's my theory: either he didn't want to do it, or he was just lying
Mm-hmm.
in general.
Yeah,
But he would. He Why did he buy all that gear before it was even approved?
I know. Did the same thing when he wanted to be a
Mhm.
bounty hunter when we lived in Washington State. Oh, the stories I could tell. We did a whole episode on that.
I've got some similar ones. I think
Yeah.
one of the biggest things that woke me up about my situation was how my ex-husband was treating my mother.
Mm.
Mm.
He would get, now she's in her 80s, and even then, we were still together. She was in her early, like 80, 81-ish, or 79, 80. Anyway, blood pressure problems, heart problems, and he would get her so upset, that she would have to just leave the room, and now her blood pressure's up and she's trying to calm down. And, you know, it was so toxic. He had me sort of poisoned against her too.
Mm-hmm.
It was a mess. But as I was sort
Yeah.
of coming to and realizing, there was one night he got her so upset and I was done. I went downstairs and I was like, don't you dare ever talk to my mother like that again.
Mm.
And he started to defend himself.
Boundary setting.
Oh,
Mm-hmm.
well, guess what? So, and he didn't know how to take that because this was not the Evelyn that he had known for years.
A quarter
And
century.
yeah. And I was like, I set a very strong boundary. He didn't know what to do. He basically tried to defend himself, saw he wasn't getting anywhere, and stomped out, still, and I'm done talking. And then he kept talking, and I said, I thought you were done talking. And and I shut the door. It was great. It was great. Anyway,
Well, the thing about boundaries is you have to put a consequence. You have to say what you don't want,
mhm,
and then you have to put a consequence to it. And the hard part is following through
mhm.
Mm-hmm.
on the consequence.
Right.
If you
Yeah.
come to my door again, I will
Mhm.
call the police. So you have to be willing to call the police. If you're not going to call the police, don't say you're going to call the police.
Yeah, I mean,
Mhm.
it's kind of like when you're a parent and you're, I'm going to ground you until the next century or whatever. And the
Mm-hmm.
kid's like,
What?
whatever,
Well,
Yeah, sure you
either
are.
they believe you and they think they're grounded for the next
Mhm.
100 years, or they think you're, pissing in the wind and
Yeah.
don't believe anything you say after that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think initially, especially if they're really young, they're like, oh no, it could happen. But over time, they see, mom keeps saying stuff, but she's not following through. So
And
it's
Right.
empty words. And there again, you're teaching a child who's eventually going to grow up, maybe get married, that mom's just saying stuff and I can do what I want because she's
Yeah.
not going to follow through.
If that's your parenting style, they're not learning how to set boundaries because they're not teaching boundaries. So when they become adults, they're not going to know how to do it.
Yeah.
Yep. And they're going to be having problems in their on all their years of not having any sort of consequence to their actions.
Right.
Yeah. The good news though is, even in my situation, I still had my youngest was still at home and I was able to start, he would ask me if I could do something and I said, well, let me see what's going on. I'll get back to you, So I felt like, well, at least once I learned how, then I could start doing it. And then also, the consequences. So,
Mhm.
Yeah,
you
it's
know,
never too late to learn how to set boundaries with people. You
mhm,
can start the minute you know what it is.
yeah.
And the minute you understand what you need to do and how you need to do it, you can just do it from then on. Just because you haven't done it in the past doesn't mean you can't do it in the future.
Right. And
Yeah.
don't be afraid of messing up
Right.
because you're not going to be really good at it at first necessarily. I mean,
Right.
Or of the other person's reaction to your boundaries,
Yeah.
because that's what typically stops people from following through is the reaction from the other person. Like if
Mhm.
they're like like that at you, that's supposed to stop you from following
Yeah.
through, but
Mhm.
you literally have to stand your ground on if it's important enough for you to set a boundary, it's important enough for you to follow through on.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's very true.
And think it through, like in advance. Or I like to do, so we've talked about this in previous episodes where I'll picture a scenario and okay, well, and I've done this early on in boundary setting. Well, Like with my son, he's not going to like it. Am I okay with him not liking it? Yes. If he gets upset, then I'm just going to say, I'm sorry, but I can't do that.
Yeah,
And let him be upset.
I think it's a bit easier when there's positions of authority, when you're doing it from a position of authority.
That's true.
Than it is with someone that you're co-equal with that's a peer.
Yeah.
It's harder with a peer. Or even an authority figure. Like, that's even harder.
Especially if you have a tendency to fawn in the presence of superiors.
Right.
Give them whatever they want. You know, I mean, I know with my growing up, it was like that. Like I mentioned with my dad, fawning was definitely a thing.
Yeah. Yeah. And you know, I was talking to a couple that I'm doing some self-defense training with, and I was relating a video, like a court testimony of the last person that Jeffrey Dahmer enticed to his apartment. You know, because we have the fight, flight, freeze, and fawn, because they've added fawn recently.
Yeah.
And you know, the way you're talking about it, it could be not helpful.
Yeah.
If you're fawning instead of setting a boundary in a situation, especially with an authority figure, it can be detrimental to you.
Yeah, for sure.
But fawning can be used in a self-defense situation where you're using it to manipulate the attacker and keeping them guessing and like thinking that you're cooperating, but then looking for an opportunity to escape.
Yes. It's definitely a way to make them think a certain way, but you're in the background strategizing.
Yes.
There again, like if this, then that.
That's a whole nother topic.
It's a whole other episode.
Stay tuned, guys. We may get into that.
whole nother topic. But
whole nother topic.
It's important to know that not all fawning is bad. It depends on what you're using it for. But what we're talking about is not fawning when you need to set a boundary. Like there's something on YouTube. Maybe you guys will know what it is. Not you guys, because I don't think you guys do. But there's a character called Veronica.
Oh yeah, I know who that is.
Nope.
Yep.
There's these little video animations of Veronica basically setting boundaries with bosses.
Ooh, I should watch that.
Yeah. And it's really good because, you know, there's so many scenarios like a boss is calling her while she's off work, and then she bills them for 2 hours. And they're like, "Why did you bill us for 2 hours?" And she goes, "Well, you called me at home, and I told you when I'm off the clock, I'm now a contractor, and it's a minimum of 2 hours, and you called me at home. So now I'm billing you for an additional 2 hours of pay as overtime."
Yes.
Right. And if she had told them that, they're doing that. So they don't really have a leg to stand on. They can't really complain because she had told them that. So
yeah. And it really comes down to what her values are as an employee.
And there's so many other things in those little things that she does that are you never would think of, but they're so true. Like the bosses blatantly taking advantage of the employees, and people don't think about stuff like that. And I hate to say, but especially people from our generation, because we were taught so differently. But this new millennial generation, I guess not new millennial generation, but they think differently about how they work and how they perform and what boundaries are going to set in their jobs. And nothing they're doing is unreasonable. I mean, I've actually learned a few things from them being in the service industry. You have to set boundaries with people. You can't just, like I was saying earlier, you can't just let people do whatever they want, because it's high stress, it's fast paced, it's high stress. We have to be able to say, hey, don't treat me that way. That's wrong.
Right.
It doesn't have to be a big deal, but it has to be, show me some respect, because I'm not going to just do whatever you want or act however you want or take whatever you want to throw at me.
Right.
Because you're in a bad mood or whatever's going on in the moment.
Yeah. One of the things I like about enforcing a boundary too, it can simply be not engaging. So I was thinking about if I told the boss that I'm not available, and I'm not available, for phone calls or texts or anything, the phone rings, I ignore it if I know it's her. Text comes in, ignore it. I remember with my ex, him screaming at me one day. He was, "Ruff, da, 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 da," and I
Mm.
just stood there. I literally stood my ground and I acted like a spectator, almost like I was a news reporter,
Mm-hmm.
and I didn't engage. My boundary was I'm not going to get pulled into his nonsense,
Yeah.
Yeah.
and he finally it's like a storm going, but it doesn't have any fuel kind of, and it just
Mhm.
sort of blows itself out. He finally
Mhm.
got
Yeah.
frustrated because I wasn't engaging.
They're looking for you to explode too. They're trying to. They may not be conscious of it, but that's their payoff. They want to see you get upset about whatever they're pushing your buttons. They're trying to get a reaction out of you.
But if you put up, I remember thinking of the term shield up.
Mm-hmm.
So you can't get to my buttons if my shield's in the way.
Right. Shields
Yeah.
up.
It's like this invisible boundary.
Yeah, I think what you're talking about, Evelyn, is dealing with narcissistic behavior is gray rocking,
Mm-hmm.
which is a kind of boundary setting because you're just not engaging. You're just refusing to be emotional
Mm-hmm.
and you're refusing to respond to what clearly is provocation and manipulation.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So I think, that can be a useful tool if you recognize narcissistic behavior going on from the other person, especially if you're trying to set a boundary with them and it's just not going well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we're at 35 minutes.
Wow, that flew.
That flew. Yeah.
All right.
Good stuff. So thank you for joining us today. If you happen to be watching this, whether it's in your home on your couch, lying in bed, I don't know, going for a walk, doing other things people do when they're on their phones, whatever those happen to be, we're so glad that you joined us today. We
Mhm.
appreciate you listening to what we have to say. Feel free to contribute to the conversation. If you have your own stories about things that you did to set boundaries that were or weren't successful, share it.
Yeah,
Let us know.
we'd love to
Yeah.
hear from you.
Yeah, and share this podcast with someone. If you think, oh, yeah, that's a great conversation about confidence. I mean, that was last week.
Yeah,
If a
tune
great
into that one,
conversation
too.
about boundaries this person
Yeah.
could get help from, feel free to share it, please.
Yeah, if
Yes,
any
please
names
do.
pop into your mind, while you're listening,
Mm-hmm.
feel free to share.
Yeah. So I thank you for joining us today. I'm Stephanie Dunham.
I'm Evelyn Mason.
I'm Rochelle Knapp.
Have a good one.
Bye, everybody.
Bye. We hope you enjoyed today's episode. Thanks so much for joining us as we discussed such an important topic. We hope you got some food for thought and encouragement to keep going and keep growing. See you later, Bear Club.